Well, the statue means an awful lot to me in terms of my childhood memories of going into the city centre in Cork. It was where my father would either start his working day sometimes or finish. And the mother would often say that she was shopping in Roche's stores that she'd meet the father at the statue because he was a bus driver. And the bus driver's hut was adjacent to the statue. And so I have very fond memories of going in there with the mother, meeting the father, meeting some of his colleagues, sort of getting the sense of camaraderie that was between the CIE workers, the conductors and the drivers. And the statue was the nerve centre for us anyway as a family. You had that sense of it. It was the nerve centre of the Cork, Patrick Street. Buses began and ended their journeys at the statue. And that goes back a long, long time and even predates my father's time. But first there was that sense of familial, or that family connection to the statue and to the CIE hut has been an important place.
And in terms of the modern generation, do you think that they even know who he is? Does it mean anything today?
You'd better ask them, but probably not, although I note that in fairness to our schools, there's a strong focus on history and civic history in all our Cork schools. I've been involved in that myself, and I've no doubt that they have had references to Father Matthew, the Apostle of Temperance, and kids will always ask questions. Why is that statue there? What is it about? So I think obviously there won't be the same sort of level because the streetscape has changed somewhat in more recent times. But nonetheless, I think it'll always be a focal point for the citizens of Cork, and a point of interest and inquiry and curiosity will always lead to people finding out a bit more about it.
And then the last point being, is it worth celebrating? And when I say that, it's not just to have a celebration. Do you think it sort of has any message for the future, or what does it stand for, and celebrate it in that context?
Well, I think it's an essential part of Cork's history, and I think it should be celebrated. And it should be reflected upon. And in modern times, whereas absolute temperance is not a popular thing, it will always be part of the equation and part of discussion. And particularly in a world where addiction and difficulties with substance abuse and so on, there's a relevance to what Father Matthew was all about. And so in that sense, it's very much part of the current debate. And certainly it's something that we should, of course, reflect on. And just to give you an illustration, what surprised me some years ago, I got a phone call as Minister for Foreign Affairs to come down to the City Hall that Ian Paisley was arriving with his wife on a private visit. They had been in Cove earlier, and he was delayed somewhat coming to City Hall. The Lord Mayor was there with me, and we were told that he was paying a visit to the statue of Father Matthew. And of course, what we didn't realise, and I asked him, you have an interest in Father Matthew? And he said, yes, he said, he would have toured Northern Ireland. And the temperance movement in Northern Ireland in that period was very familiar with his work, and he would have addressed meetings there on the issue of temperance and abstaining from alcohol. And I thought that was a footnote really in history. Here was one of the leading figures in the history of this island for quite a long, long time. Here was a leading figure in history for quite a long, long time. And actually having a strong connection with Cork through the statue, through Father Matthew and the temperance issue. And I found that fascinating. And it just showed me there's an awful lot more behind the statue. There's an awful lot more behind that man. That is of interest to historians and those interested in our past.